In the late 80s and early 90s, the Punisher achieved significant prominence within Marvel Comics' publishing line, attaining a level of popularity that positioned him alongside iconic characters such as Superman, Batman, and Spider-Man. He was so popular and had such widespread appeal that Marvel necessitated the concurrent release of 4 ongoing series dedicated to the character: Punisher, Punisher War Journal, Punisher War Zone, and Punisher 2099. And that doesn't even count all the other miniseries and guest appearances he was making. While numerous other titles featured the Punisher, these 4 series represented the core of his monthly publishing presence during this period. But why was he so popular, and why did he have such cultural significance? I feel like it was this perfect storm of what was going on in comics and in the wider culture. We were seeing this big shift towards darker, more morally gray heroes. Think about even the success of Wolverine becoming a huge deal. People were craving something beyond the squeaky clean do-gooders, and Frank Castle, with his brutal, no-holds-barred approach, fit that bill perfectly. Plus, let's be real, the 90s had this whole extreme vibe going on. From music to fashion to movies, everything was turned up to 11, and the Punisher, with his massive guns and relentless violence, was the ultimate comic book embodiment of that. He was edgy, he was intense, and for a lot of readers looking for something beyond the norm, he was exactly what they wanted. I think a big part of it too was that the Punisher tapped into some real anxieties that people were feeling. There was this sense that the traditional justice system wasn't always working, and here was a guy who took matters into his own hands and delivered swift, decisive justice, even if it was way outside of the law. So yeah, the 90s were the perfect time for the Punisher to really take off. He was the right character with the right attitude, hitting the scene at just the right moment. So what better comic to delve in today to talk about the character than issue number 1 of Punisher Warzone? From the shadowed valleys of Brooklyn to the neon-drenched streets of Manhattan, 1992's Punisher Warzone throws readers headfirst into Frank Castle's brutal crusade against crime. Writer Chuck Dixon and artist J.R. waste no time establishing the grim and unforgiving landscape the Punisher navigates. The story masterfully interweaves personal conflict with the Punisher's relentless war on organized crime, showcasing his unwavering dedication to his mission. So without further ado, let's get right into it. We're plunged into a brutal alleyway in the Bushwick section of Brooklyn, a place where shadows cling and desperation festers. Punisher's informant, his face contorted in a primal scream, clutches a terrified woman. Her eyes wide with impending doom lock onto something just beyond our view, a figure lurking in the oppressive darkness. That figure is the Punisher. Cloaked in black, the iconic skull emblazoned across his chest, he's a specter of vengeance emerging from the gloom. His trenchcoat billows, a silent promise of the storm about to break. We don't see his face, but the very posture of his hulking frame radiates lethal intent. He's a predator stalking his prey, a judge, jury, and executioner rolled into one grim silhouette. He states that he's walking into a bad situation that is only getting worse, and that this snitch has gone completely ballistic on ice or lightning or some other lab junk. Frank attempts a lethal shot to end the chaos, but the criminal uses the female police officer hostage as a shield, throwing her in front of him as the Punisher grazes the officer as his shot hits the informant in the gut. The criminal informant pleads with Frank, stating he possesses valuable information. However, the Punisher dismisses him with a cold, dead response. "You have nothing I can use, Dilbert." With an expression of disgust, hatred, and raw determination, the Punisher unleashes a barrage of gunfire into the informant's body, declaring, "Dilbert was useful to me once. He heard things. He hung with the bottom feeders. He can hang with the devil now." The injured officer, previously Dilbert's hostage, raises her weapon and commands Frank to freeze. Aware of her partner's serious injuries, the Punisher advises her that calling for backup would be a more prudent course of action before her partner succumbs to his wounds. As he departs, he leaves her with the unsettling thought, "You do what you think is right." Back at the Punisher's hideout, Micro asserts that Frank has crossed a line, emphasizing the potential danger to the officer and the child eyewitnesses. Frank appears indifferent, expressing gratitude for their relocation to Brooklyn, as it positions them closer to the center of activity. Micro voices his concern that Frank is pushing himself excessively, suffering from sleep deprivation and consequently making errors that could lead to his capture or death. Irritated by Micro's Monday morning quarterbacking, Frank scoffs and insults him, suggesting, "Maybe you can't handle it anymore." This prompts Micro to leave in anger. The Punisher follows Micro, questioning if his partner has lost his resolve for their ongoing war. Frank's trust in Micro has waned recently. However, Micro, aware of Frank's pursuit, deceives him and boards a departing subway train. Frank grips the back of the subway car to maintain his tracking of Micro's movements. They disembark in Midtown Manhattan during a rain-soaked night. Micro adopts a disguise, causing Frank to become increasingly cautious and suspicious. Frank ultimately trails Micro to a corporate office where Micro engages in conversation with a man who is taking notes and recording their exchange, an act Frank perceives as a betrayal. Upon Micro's return to their hideout, Frank awaits him in the darkness, armed with a fully loaded Beretta. As Frank begins to question him, Micro becomes enraged and reveals that the individual he has been meeting with is a psychoanalyst, assisting him in coping with the loss of his son. Through tearful utterances, Micro expresses the profound grief he feels for his deceased son, lamenting that their actions against villains and criminals have not alleviated his pain. Frank callously dismisses Micro's heartfelt sentiment, demanding to know if Micro has disclosed Frank's identity as the Punisher, their mission, or their ongoing war. Overwhelmed by rage, Micro departs after hearing this, stating that he has been consumed by self-blame for his son's death and must continue to live with that burden. Micro slams the door behind him. Frank acknowledges that he has hurt Micro, yet he rationalizes that this is necessary to maintain Micro's sharpness and focus on their mission. Frank discharges a volley of bullets into the empty warehouse, shattering glass and old wooden storage boxes as he states, "I hurt him, but he'll heal. He just needs more scar tissue." After a brief period of sleep, Frank awakens searching for Micro and asserting that he will return. However, until then, it is time to get to work. He opens his locker, revealing his uniform and the Punisher skull emblem staring back at him. The scene transitions to a seemingly ordinary Chinese restaurant on Mulberry Street. While appearing to be just another establishment in Chinatown from the exterior, its basement serves as the illicit bank for the Triad's casino operations. Burglars infiltrate the restaurant and descend the stairs to acquire some side money. The burglars swiftly clear out the counting room, securing over $100,000 in cash. Their operation is executed with remarkable speed. However, as they hasten towards their getaway vehicle, they realize their situation is about to deteriorate drastically. The Punisher ambushes them in the open, unleashing a devastating barrage of gunfire. Wielding an AR-15 in one hand and an Uzi in the other, Frank delivers a lethal hailstorm of fiery rounds. He incapacitates the criminals cold-heartedly, intentionally inflicting excessive bullet wounds to send a clear and forceful message to any potential evildoers. The Punisher deliberately leaves one man alive to extract information. He transports him to his warehouse and suspends him upside down by his feet. He allows his victim to scream for a period before finally stating his primary objective for bringing the thug there. "I want you to get me an introduction to your bosses," he says. The Punisher reveals to the reader that his victim's name is Mickey Fondozzi, a soldier for the Carbone family. The Punisher adopts a bad cop persona, but Mickey remains stubbornly silent. Consequently, the Punisher resorts to extreme measures to compel his cooperation, producing a welding blowtorch. The Punisher's imposing figure is illuminated by the searing light of the blowtorch, emphasizing the skull emblem on his chest as a symbol of fear for his adversaries. Frank informs Mickey, "It won't hurt at first, Mick. It's too hot. Sears the nerve endings. You'll smell burning meat. Then it'll hurt." Mickey screams in terror and agony, the fear of impending torture rendering him paralyzed with dread. Unbeknownst to Mickey, Frank is actually applying a frozen popsicle to his skin while burning a slab of steak to simulate the smell of burning flesh. Mickey pathetically cries out, "I'll do anything you want," to which Frank reveals the popsicle and retorts, "See, it's not how much it hurts, it's how much you think it'll hurt," before shoving the popsicle into Mickey's mouth. Later, Frank follows Mickey to his apartment, stating, "I trust him as far as I can throw him, but he knows that if he rats me out, I'll kill him." While inside, a mob boss named Andy Calabrese calls Mickey, informing him that some of his men were fatally shot in Mulberry Street during a heist, and that he urgently requires additional personnel for a new opportunity. Subsequently, Mickey arrives at Frankie's rec room in Brooklyn, where he meets with Andy Calabrese and Mr. Carbone to present the newest member of their team. He introduces a menacingly tough, gruff, and burly figure emerging from the shadows, known as Johnny Tower, who is purportedly Mickey's cousin from Kansas City. Unbeknownst to Andy and Mr. Carbone, this is the Punisher in disguise, poised and ready, but awaiting the opportune moment to deliver a fatal shot. Right off the bat, you can tell that this cover is pure early 90s energy. We've got that awesome die-cut wraparound design, definitely a product of its time when gimmick covers were all the rage, but honestly, it's still pretty cool, fun, and engaging. The bright red background absolutely pops and would have grabbed your eye right off the shelf. And then there's the Punisher himself, front and center. Now, the figure is definitely over-exaggerated, but in the best way possible. The way he's drawn, with those guns pointing straight at you, it just reels you right in. You can't help but want to know what kind of mayhem this guy is about to unleash. And to really drive home just how over-the-top the Punisher is when he's taking down bad guys, we've got bullet shell casings flying everywhere across the cover. It's a visual explosion that perfectly sets the stage for this kind of intense, no-holds-barred action you're about to find inside. This cover isn't subtle, and it makes absolutely no apologies for it, and I love it. It's loud, it's exciting, and it instantly tells you what you're in for with Punisher Warzone issue number 1. On this first page, we are plunged headfirst into the absolute grime and darkness of the criminal underworld that the Punisher deals with day in and day out. The deliberate inclusion of these minute details meticulously establishes the tone and setting for our first encounter here. Elements such as the absent ceiling light fixture, the presence of cracks and stains on the ceilings, and discarded, decaying food on the ground collectively paint a picture of neglect and decay. And here's something you don't always see in your typical superhero comic: a pool of blood from the injured officer. That's a stark visual that immediately tells you that Frank's informant isn't just some random guy, but that things have gone sideways and that he is actually extremely dangerous and out of control. It adds a real sense of an immediate threat here. But what truly dominates this opening and sends chills down your spine is the dark and ominous figure of the Punisher himself. He's cast almost entirely in shadow, making him feel larger than life. This hulking, steadfast presence that looks absolutely immovable. And then, piercing through the darkness, you get that quintessential Punisher skull. It's instantly recognizable and just screams finality and death. Now we get to what is, for me, the absolute standout image of the entire book. This double splash page just throws you head first into the Punisher's brutal world, and it does not hold back. Look at how Chuck Dixon and John Romita Jr. decide to have Frank's face here. You can see this raw expression of just pure disgust mixed with this unwavering determination. There's absolutely no hint of remorse. It's like he's just clocking in for another day of taking out the trash. You really get the sense that this is a man who's seen too much and is beyond being affected by the violence he dishes out. Now, the art style on this page, again, is just phenomenal. The stark contrast between the bold blacks and whites creates this incredible noirish vibe, which I think perfectly fits the gritty and unforgiving nature of the Punisher's mission. The heavy inks and the sharp, defined angles really emphasize just how imposing and dangerous Frank is. But what really elevates this image for me is the way they've illustrated this almost vengeful fire radiating off of his body. It's this visual representation of the pure hatred and fury that fuels the Punisher at his absolute peak. You can practically feel the violence crackling around him, hinting at the sheer brutality he's about to unleash and the kind of aura he projects. This next page employs a really compelling visual narrative in this top panel here, strategically placing the Beretta in the immediate foreground to create a palpable sense of intimidation directed solely at Micro is such a cool and effective visual touch. It immediately tells you, without any words, that this conversation is about to get intense. It's a great visual storytelling technique that sets the stage for a serious confrontation. And how about how John Romita Jr. illustrates Frank here? Almost completely shrouded in darkness. The use of negative space here is just brilliant. It creates this really ominous and powerful presence for the Punisher. I feel like it's such a simple technique, but the impact is huge. It makes you wonder about the collaboration between Romita, his pencils, and Klaus Janssen's inks, and seeing the original art for this page must have been absolutely fascinating to try and understand how they built this incredible effect. I really would have loved to see that. And Klaus Janssen's inking on Frank's face here is just a masterclass. I mean, look at these dark circles around his eyes. They don't just make him look tired, but they convey this immense intensity like he's staring right through you. But it also emphasizes just how grizzled and worn down the Punisher is. The artwork balances the depiction of Frank's ruggedness without aging him excessively through the careful application of very talented line work. What I really appreciate is how they walk that fine line. He looks rough and tough, but they don't go overboard and make him look ancient with like a million wrinkles. I think it's a perfect balance. And then you have that panel with the automatic pistol firing like 5 times in quick succession. It's just such a dynamic and energetic visual. It really adds a sense of kinetic action to the scene. And finally, we see Frank here just brooding at the end. You can tell that he is not happy about Micro leaving, and maybe even angry at himself about how their conversation went down. It's almost like he's throwing a little silent tantrum here, smashing things and shooting out windows. It shows you that this interaction has really affected him, even though he's not really the type to show his emotions openly. Then we get to our next action scene, and right away you're hit with this incredible visual of the Punisher just unleashing hell. Dual wielding like a total Chad, he is the unstoppable force of fury tearing through evil. The sheer amount of spent bullet casings flying around him, it's like a visual representation of pure unadulterated firepower. And check out his face. That grimace is all business, a look of pure determination mixed with maybe just a hint of savage satisfaction. You know that he is on a crusade with unwavering focus and ruthless efficiency. The way this page is laid out is just so impactful. The low angle puts you, the reader, right in the middle of the action, staring down the barrels of his guns. Those bright muzzle flashes cutting through the darkness amplify the chaos and keep your eyes glued to the Punisher at the center of it all. Now, what's really interesting here are the little glimpses into Frank's thought process as we get a deeper look into the character. He's not just spraying and praying, no, he's got a twisted kind of strategy. He's admitting here that he's not just trying to scare these guys, he's trying to force their hand with overwhelming firepower. And then you get that caption box of his inner monologue where he says, "I take him down hard, maybe a little too hard, but I'm trying to make a point." It's almost darkly humorous because of how excessive it is, but it also shows you there is a grim logic to his extreme methods. Visually, this page is just a total knockout. The stark blacks contrasting with those vibrant neon colors create this really intense and chaotic atmosphere. The motion lines and those bursts of energy make you feel the impact of every shot. The way they frame the Punisher right in the middle of all this destruction too, it makes him the undeniable, unstoppable force driving this violent storm. Now this panel always makes me laugh a little bit because after all this intense action, right, we get this almost like cartoonish moment where Frank just kind of bops a guy on the head to knock him out. It's like something straight out of a Tom and Jerry cartoon, and it provides this really unexpected bit of levity, but hey, I'm alright with it. And then right after that, the art goes back to being chillingly effective. We see John Romita Jr. and Klaus Janson once again using that incredible negative space to show the Punisher lurking in the shadows of his hideout. Seriously, the way that they draw him emerging from the darkness here, oh man, it's like a shark appearing out of murky water, you know what I mean? It sends a real shiver down your spine. And then the very next panel, it's got what might be my absolute favorite profile shot of Frank's face here, just radiating pure, unwavering determination. Gotta love it. This whole scene actually made it into the 2004 Punisher movie, the one with Thomas Jane. And listen, say what you will about that flick, but I still enjoy it to this day, or I have a blast every time I watch it. Now, when I first read this, though, I always thought the popsicle thing was a little bit goofy. And you've got Frank, who's just absolutely wiping out criminals in the street, right? No hesitation, just putting holes in them like Swiss cheese. And then he's casually got this popsicle thing. It just felt a bit strange and the tone was a bit off. But as I've reread this, I've come to appreciate it as a really interesting way to showcase Frank's ingenuity and his psychological warfare. It's not always about brute force with him. Sometimes it's about his more cunning, opportunities, his intimidation, and just the sheer terror he instills in his victims that can get him the best results. Well, as we've journeyed through the opening act of Punisher Warzone #1, it's clear why this character resonated so strongly in the cultural landscape of the early 90s. Frank Castle embodies a raw, visceral response to a broken world, a figure who operates outside the conventional boundaries of law and morality. This issue masterfully sets the stage for a brutal and uncompromising narrative, showcasing the Punisher's lethal efficiency, his complex and fracturing relationship with Micro, and his calculated descent into the criminal underworld. The impactful storytelling of Chuck Dixon and the dynamic artwork of John Romita Jr., powerfully enhanced by Klaus Janson's inks, perfectly captures the gritty atmosphere and the sheer intensity of the Punisher's one-man war. From the stark shadows of Brooklyn to the unsettling psychological games within this book, this debut issue of Warzone firmly establishes a world where justice is delivered with extreme prejudice and the line between hero and anti-hero is deliberately blurred. It's a potent and unapologetic introduction to a character who embodies a darker, more extreme form of justice, and this issue proves exactly why. So what are your final thoughts on this opening to Punisher Warzone #1? Let me know in the comments section. Thank you as always so much for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next one.